Well, it's good to see some of that you are back again to the webinar. And this topic is going to be DSS V7, verifying your speeds for the RAID array that you create and your NICs. This is really important for, especially when you're deploying a new system. So, it helps you identify where bottlenecks are in some instances, and also, especially before you put it in production, you want to be able to test this. So we're going to go over about testing the read and write speeds of the RAID array that you created. Also, we're going to install a small update for the NIC speed test. This is really critical in areas that I've caught some cases on with our support engineers to identify if there is maybe some bad packets that are happening that you should be getting better performances. So we'll set up the NIC on the DSS V7s. One's going to be a master and the other one's going to be a slave. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. And we will verify the NIC info on the console screen. So this is a updated area where instead of you looking at the log file, especially in the test.log in the ifconfig area, here we'll be able to see if there's any bad packets or drop packets. Then we're going to perform the NIC speed tests. So let's go ahead and start off with the RAID and get going. We'll go ahead and start with node A, as I had identified here. You're seeing that I have two arrays. So one is unit S001, which is what you see here, and that's already configured. And of course I have an available one that is not configured. There is a reason why. Because if you have a configured array already, I can only perform the read test. And with an unconfigured array, which means I have not formatted, it's just the RAID is available, and I've already configured, I might have misspelled that, is that it's available for me to format it with our XFS file system. So here's where we're able to do the read and write. So you can only do the write test when you don't have a volume formatted, such as you see as S001. Now we're going to go into the console screen, and in order to do that, I also get a lot of people asking how do you do it, so I might as well go and show you before we proceed to go into the console screen. What you want to do to get to remote console access, this is a lifesaver to many engineers who don't have to walk to the other server room, they can get it remotely, is we're going to go to Setup, Administrator Settings, and we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom towards where it says Remote Console Access. Here you could put allow IP addresses if you want. I just leave it blank. You're going to leave the defaults. You can change the defaults port type. So if you have many systems, if you're trying to get them over a WAN and you need to go through a NAT or set the port, you can change that to 22,224 and so forth. And of course, setting the password. Once you do that, then there's a couple things. If you click on the question mark, that will help you. First is remember that the username, when it's presented to you, is CLI for command line interface. So here you could see that we have the user, if you're going to do it for another system, is CLI. And then you want to be able to set it for port VT100 plus if you're using PuTTY. So just remember that that's located in the terminal keyboard settings. So remember you're accessing via the username is CLI and then whatever password you have signed. Alright, so let's go into the console screen. We're going to select 220, which is what we're on right now. Now I've already logged in to save time. Where do you find this? It's really called a system benchmark performance test for your RAID array. What I do is you want to go to Control-Alt-W. Of course, you're going to have to enter the GUI password, and the default for what I have is admin. Okay. So now you're going to see down near the bottom option number 7 is system benchmarks. Let's go ahead and you hit enter, and now I have two options. And remember I have two RAID arrays. One is configured, one is not, that's been formatted, ready to go to be used as a volume group, and the other one has not. So the one that has not been formatted, I can run the read and write test. The one that is already a volume group, I can only perform the read test. Let's take a look. So I'm going to select the read test. It gives me the option that I can do both because I can read on both. I'm going to hit the space bar, select the unit S001, which is already my volume group. Hit enter. You're going to give this about a couple seconds, and it's going to run through some performances, and you'll see that my max speed on this RAID array that I've created is 327 megabytes. Now you can make some adjustments right on the fly, even though the volume group is already presented. Let's take a look. If I were to go, and I'm using an LSI RAID controller, if I go to setup hardware RAID, and we're going to see that I have two arrays. So the logical drive 0 is the one that I have already configured and that we're using to test, and I could change my performances. So here I may want to change just to test what my read-only performance would be versus from our last test, and we may want to try adaptive and see if there's any changes or improvements. So you could do this on the fly, and you can also do this even while users are still writing data to that array. Bear in mind that if there are a lot of users on, of course, this performance value will be different. So it's always best to do this when you first install the system and you're testing before you deploy, before it leaves the docks to your customers, or for you end users, please test before you put in production. So let's look at our RAID test again. So we'll select spacebar on S001 and see if there was a difference. Now, even if you run it again, you'll have a difference. So really, there wasn't that much. So that's something that you might want to test also by creating different RAID arrays. So you may have a RAID 10, a RAID 5, RAID 6, and doing different stripe sizes. And that's where your value in testing is. Now let's go look at the write test. Obviously, if I want to do a write test, I want to arrow down my cursor keys, select spacebar, and hit enter. And it's going to see S002 that it is available. So I did not format it yet. So if I did, I wouldn't have that availability. Again, we're going to hit spacebar, hit enter. And of course, we bring this little message that really just basically puts a little attention to what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be writing benchmark on this unit. So that's why we present that message. All right, so here we are going to get about 186. Let's run it again. And I'm going to show you something. If we run it again, we had 186 before, and you'll see a little difference. So don't be alarmed that it's inconsistent. It's always going to fluctuate by 10 megabits to 4 megabits. So here you see it just increased. So that's usually because of the disks have spun and are spinning up, and that's why you're getting that increase. Now, what happens if we do some changes here? So this was LD, logical drive 1, that we're performing the write test on. Let's say I were to take the write back off, and I'm just going to use write through. Let's apply that. Now we had 186, 196. Let's see what it looks like now. Okay, we're going to take the arrow key, space, and run it. $185. So again, it depends upon your array, how you're doing caching. You may see some variable differences. Now I will warn you that when you're doing a write back test, it doesn't affect immediately, but when you start sending a lot of data, more random than sequential, this will be affected, and you'll see lower performances. Now these are our SATA drives, so they're 1 terabyte, very inexpensive low-end drives. Let me show you what SSD can do. Now I have SSD on another server. This is on my 221 server. Let's pull them up. Again, we're going to go Control-Alt-W, enter the default password, which for me is admin, and for all of you who just started to use the DSS without setting the password, which I highly recommend you change. Okay, so we're going to go to System Benchmarks, and we are going to do the write test. And I did not configure SS2, so that way it's ready for us to demonstrate. And these are the Intel, these are the Intel SSDs, the 320 series. Look at the difference on that. And I'll show you the GUI on that. Let's go take a look on 221, which is node B. And this is this guy, so I have very low capacity on these SSD drives. Go to hardware RAID. It's LD1. I have my write back setting. I'm using adaptive, so we'll do a read test. But here you can see that you can change these on the fly. And again, these are my settings that I have. And these are the two drives that I'm using for the SSDs that you see right here that are the Intel. So having SSD, especially for data, also I'm using a RAID 0, so that has a significant impact on it as well. But what I'm trying to point out to you is that what's really great about what I'm seeing a lot of engineers are doing, they're using SSDs for their databases for VMware, and so they're creating another volume group, let's say VG02, and they only need maybe 500 gig, but they really want to get the performance. And here you could see the difference instead of using SATA drives as a bit bucket. So again, and when you run the read test, I have it set for the value on my read a little bit lower on tuning aspects to be a little bit lower than my write test. So you can see it's a little bit lower versus the 600 meg. So that's what I recommend for you guys to do to test your systems before you deploy them, before you use them into real environments in production. Now let's get to the NIC test. What I'm going to be doing on the NIC test, let's bring these guys back to their original position, is we're going to need to get a small update. So for those of you, oh, by the way, I want to make sure that this system benchmark test is also available in DSS V6 and also in V7. So it comes with it. For the NIC test, to test the speeds of the NIC, you're going to need a small update. So write an email to pre-sales@open-e.com or just info@open-e.com wanting the small update for the NIC test, and we'll provide that to you. So when you get the small update for DSS V7, it's going to be the small update 70,001. I know it's a large number, but just work with it because we do have a lot of small updates that we really don't include yet into the full version. Here, if I go into the small update areas that I have, this is the small update you're going to want. It's a very small file. You can have many small updates in DSS V6 and V7. So if there's a request that you want that we already have done, especially for the new 10 gig Intel drivers that are out, go ahead and ask for them. But we give this to everybody, basic, standard, or premium. So you want to upload this into the GUI and then provide upload, and it's there. I've already uploaded it, and you want to reboot right after or it won't take effect. So make sure it's on both DSS systems. So you have two DSSs. You can use this on the trial version as well, also on DSS Lite. Once you update this, apply it, you need to reboot. And once you come back up, you can verify it by clicking on this down arrow key to make sure that you have installed it properly. And here you'll see it, Network Test Tools, and for add-ons on DSS V7 up. And of course you can have other small updates like I have the new Intel IXGBE driver and so the version. So now I've already rebooted these systems, so I'm pretty much ready to go for performing this test on both DSSs. And you could do this test with pretty much with any 1 gig E, 10 gig E, and InfiniBand. I don't have anything for fiber channel. So how it really works is I'm going to be using the IP address of that NIC. If we look here, I'm going to have an updated list of all the NICs that I have. 6 and 7 are my 10 gig E's, and then I have my multiple 1 gig E's with my quad port, and also for my other nodes. So this will tell me when we go into the console screen, once we do our update, where do we want to go? We want to go to the tools, and that's going to be Control-Alt-T. So let's go to Control-Alt-T. Of course, there's no password for this. We want to select add-ons, option number 6. And this is also for V6 as well, that you can ask for the small update and be able to, you're going to be going in the same section of the add-ons. And it also is option number 6. So here we have the last option, TCP Network Test. We're going to select that. So we need to make one master and one slave. On the top right up here, you'll see that I pretty much reference all the webinars to the 4th octet. Here I've got 220. That's usually my source server or my local server, and 221 is going to be my remote. So I'm going to make this master for now. Now I'm going to switch them around. So we want to make sure on the 221 we get that set up for the secondary or the destination server. Again, we're going to do Control-Alt-T, select add-ons, TCP Network Test, and select slave. We're going to make it active. Maybe it was on before, so let's do it again. TCP Network Test, slave. Yes, slave mode has been activated. Okay, now let's go back to our master. And now what we're going to do, we're going to hit enter on this and enter the IP address of the slave. So here we'll go 192.168. Dot, we'll just do 1.221. Remember, that's our destination server. We're going to hit enter. So this is going to take a couple seconds again. So it's testing its process. It's going to go through a 100% procedure, and it's going to verify the speeds, and we're going to switch it around to verify that we're receiving some commonality, some consistency. So what you're going to see here is on the right, you're going to see the megabits per second that you're receiving, and on the bottom it totals and averages that out. So you can see that I'm really maxing it out on the 1 gig NIC. Now let's test it for we're going to switch them now. So we're going to test the other one in master mode and this one on slave. So let's go ahead and, while we're here on this one, set him to slave mode now. Okay, he's been activated. Now we're going to go to our destination. This is 221. Network speed test, and set him for master. Now we're going to enter the IP address of the opposite end. 192.168.1.220. So our number that we received from 220 being in master mode was about 940 megabits per second. So here we're going to find out if it's equal. So you want to really do this on both ends. So there's a little difference here. Let's run it again to make sure that maybe there could be something going on that we're not getting close enough to. So let's try it again. 192.168.1.220. So we're going to let this run, see what happens. Okay, so it's coming out consistent, but I'm losing about, probably about from where we were before, we're losing about 6 megabits. So that's an acceptable rate. A lot of you aren't going to notice it that much, and I am getting good theoretical speeds. I can basically, actually I want to go back. What I can is start investigating maybe that NIC that is on the one network, the 1.220 and 221, maybe there's something on with the NIC. Maybe I'm having drop packets. And this is what part of the webinar that I wanted to show you and try to demonstrate as much realism as possible. If you look down here, if I want to get into the NIC information, you do Control-Alt-N. And normally, I would, when you send in logs and you're asking what's going on, or I'm having latency issues, we just feel like the VMs are dropping off, 9 out of 10 times you can go right in here and you can find out information if you have bad packets, drop packets, if maybe an MTU value is off, which is your jumbo frames, which we catch. So here you're going to get information that I'm using this Intel 1 gig NIC that's right here. It's providing me the MTU value of 1500. You could change that to different rates. You can get up to different rates from the vendor's recommendations and change those values. Just make sure that if you have it a bond, don't just change the bond 0 value. You need to change the underlying NICs as well as the bond that you have. So here I'm really not seeing, I'm full duplex. It's looking at everything fine. and I don't have any errors or drop packets. So you want to make sure that you investigate that as well before you deploy a system out. And also, if you could check this live as well, so if I'm sending data to this, you can keep refreshing this and this will update continuously. Well, that's pretty much it, and I'm glad you guys stopped by. Please remember you can ask questions at pre-sales@open-e.com, and we'll be happy to answer you anytime. Also, keep a note that products, if you need to update your system or verify and you really don't want to log into your user portal, you can just click here in Products, DSS V7, and go to Download 60-day trial version. Here you can download the installer. This is the latest version. You can see the date and also the build number that we have here, and download the ISO file and upload your DSS V7. Always remember to save your data. Maintenance miscellaneous. Take all 4 options. It's just worth it. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.